coming to access control and segregation of duties. So these are the common terms which we would have heard about day in and day out. So what exactly are these and how are they affecting our SAP S/4HANA system is something we'll talk more about. So when it comes to, before jumping on to segregation of duties, I'd like to first talk about what is access control. So access control, basically in the layman language, if we talk about, it's nothing but limiting the access to information for any end users or for information processing systems. So we just need to limit the access in order to make sure that we are not giving the elevated access or any additional access which is not required for that in individual for his particular day-to-day work or his maybe less frequency once in a week work also. We need to ensure that that kind of control is there in place. So when we talk about SAP, this translates into ensuring that users can only access data and transactions relevant to their role. So in terms of Fiori, if I talk about, the transactions will be translated into Fiori apps. So in terms of SAP, the entire access control which we will delve into would be more into restricting access to the Fiori apps the user has access to. So that's a quick definition about the access control. Now coming to segregation of duties. So segregation of duties, if I look at the definition standpoint, so it is basically, it can be named as like a critical internal control that prevents any single individual from executing two or more conflicting sensitive tasks. So if both the tasks are sensitive and then both of them are given to any individual, it may result into something called a segregation of duties. So segregation of duties basically aims to reduce the risks of errors or fraud. So this is the basic thing in short which I can think about, that if we implement an efficient segregation of duties, we'll intend to reduce the errors or fraud which may potentially have happened if both the sensitive accesses are given to any individual. So again, I mean, sensitive access, when I say, so sensitive access on its own also is very critical. So that also should be taken care of while assigning to any individual. But then, yeah, I mean, when there are two or more sensitive risks and then they become combined, they result into segregation of duties, or in short, we call as SODs. So if we think about any real life use case, I've got something for you from a recent document which I came across. So I just wanted to walk you through that to give you a more real life example on how basically things happen in the real world. So this is an example from Barings Bank, which is like one of the oldest banks of UK, which was brought down in 1995 by the actions of a single trader called Nick Leeson from its Singapore office. So the bank, like almost history dating back to 1762, was declared insolvent, as we can see in this. And then this will be diving into what led to the collapse of the entire bank. And I mean, after the investigation, it was brought into the notice that the major thing was the segregation of duties which were overlooked during that time, and it led to a huge loss of more than 800 million during the time of 1995. So if we convert it to today's how the pound to INR is converted, we can think about it may result into hundreds of crores. So let's just see that what exactly happened during 1995 with the Barings Bank. So basically, Nick Leeson was the person who was playing a dual role, and then there was definitely an SOD which was overlooked. So the Nick Leeson was in charge for both the trading floor and the settlement operations. So what does that dual role meant? So it meant that he could trade freely on the behalf of the bank while also reporting his activities without any oversight. So he was doing both these roles without any oversight or any third person evaluating his activities. So this was one of the major things which he took the advantage of. So if there would have been a proper SOD environment, these roles would have been strictly separated, and then they could have just avoided the collapse of the bank or the entire losses which they incurred. Again, I mean, these are some of the things which refer to the same SOD related things. So due to the lack of SOD, again, he was able to hide his losses in an error account. He used to report it in an error account that it was an error. And because of that, he used to manage both trading as well as reporting, and then he was able to manipulate the system. So yeah, I think I'll share this case study with you. You can go this in detail. But yeah, well, basically the purpose of sharing this case study was to ensure that if we have proper SODs in place, we can definitely reduce lot of financial risks which are there if SODs are implemented efficiently in the system. So I'll jump on to the slide again. Yeah, as we discussed, the SODs, if properly implemented, it will assist us in reducing the frauds and reducing the errors, as well as preventing the errors and frauds both. So what's next? So how do we improve the access control and segregation of duties? So let's look at the tools for SODs which are available for us to be used. So the first thing is the strategy itself, I would say, because that's your key thing which you need to discuss and then you need to come up with, depending on client to client, that what would be your strategy in terms of preventing the SODs or creating the SODs or creating the rule sets. We'll talk about this in detail as well. But yeah, I mean, before coming to any tools, it's first the strategy. How do you want to deal with it? So basically, this slide will be discussing the implementation strategies for managing SOD policies effectively. So the first thing which is there is the dynamic review of the SOD rule sets. So SOD rule sets, as all of us would know, that this is a like a document which is an ideally should be a dynamic document which we should keep on updating as in when the businesses evolve or the new functions get embedded into the systems. So once you design any SOD rule set, you need to ensure that we are dynamically updating it. There might be few functions which are getting added, few functions getting obsolete or getting removed from the system. So in order to ensure that all the SODs which are marked in the rule sets are completely presently available in the system, and there is no overlook again of the new SODs coming in with the new functions or the new businesses getting acquired by the client. So the first is the utmost important, that we need to ensure that there is a dynamic review of the rule sets which we have designed. So second comes is the empowerment of the business ownership and accountability. So again, I mean, as we see that once we are the security consultants or we have taken the ownership of maintaining the security posture of the client, we need to ensure that we take the complete ownership from a business standpoint, and then we ask the right questions to the client in terms of any security concerns which we see, and then we need to ensure that we try to embed it in the SOD document or the rule set document which we are creating, and then accordingly we need to ensure that it is in place and then it is easily accessible for us whenever we need it. And then it needs to have a accountability, as in we need to ensure that there's at least 2 or 3 level checks whenever we are updating anything. So any person having access to update the rule sets should not be able to update it on its own, and then there should be regular checks, or at least 2 level checks is the minimum, that if one is updating it, the other person reviews it so that it is aligned with the business objectives as well. Third is the agile remediation for SOD violation. So I think all of us would know that there are two kinds of project implementations. One is the agile and the other is the waterfall method. So agile remediation basically refers to ensuring that again you are timely reviewing it based on 2 week sprints, 3 week sprints, whatever is decided by the client and by the organization who is supporting the client in ensuring the security objectives, is that you are doing it in an agile way, and then you are ensuring that it is not overlooked and then it is not updated after a long time gap. So that's about the agile remediation. And the fourth one comes is the integration of identity risk analytics into workflows. So risk analytics is something which we get once we install the GRC access control tool. So GRC access control will help us in identifying the risk analytics directly into the workflows of our system. So this will look at when we go into GRC as access control risk analysis in detail. So the next few things are based on the education. So we need to ensure that we are giving the proper education and training to the end users so that they are educated about what is an SOD, how will it affect their systems, how will it affect their businesses. So, I mean, it need not be, we need not spend more time in it, but yeah, I think there should be regular sessions, maybe with the concerned stakeholders, so that we can try to educate them and then try to make them understand in the layman language that what is it, and then why are we doing this much research, and then why are we spending time in order to build a strong SOD platform and an access control mechanism for the client. Yeah. So the first tool which we have for the strategies for SOD is the GRC risk terminator. So GRC risk terminator basically acts as a safeguard to automatically analyzing any changes in roles or user assignment against any predefined SOD rules within the SAP GRC system. So this risk terminator was present in your ECC system, and the same is applicable for the SAP S/4HANA system as well. So this is like a very efficient tool which is available in the market right now, which is, I mean, like our as SAP proprietary tool as well from almost a decade now. Initially, it used to be a separate tool called Versa, which SAP acquired, and then now it's a SAP proprietary tool called as GRC Access Control. So it is a very smooth tool basically, which is used by multiple clients in order to ensure that their risk terminator or the risk engine is dynamically updated, and then it works by automatically analyzing any changes made to your roles and user assignments as well. So it will help you in making sure that your system is risk free, or at least even if there are risks, so if there are any mitigation controls available, what is there so that you can apply it, and if it's not there, then what kind of risk it is. So all of that, it basically is a platform where you can define your risks, and then you can try to prevent any new risks which are coming in with the existing roles, with the creation of new roles. So you can basically try to leverage it for all the things. So there might be cases where there is a requirement for creating a new role. So even there is a feature for simu which you can leverage before creating that role in the actual system. So when it comes to simulation, I mean that you can basically create that role, get it simulated in the real-time condition that if that role exists in the particular system, what all things will affect the existing roles, and then how will it affect your entire rule set as well. So these are the things which the GRC risk terminator basically assists us in. So it basically helps us in detecting any potential SOD conflicts when roles are assigned or changed. So even if roles are assigned to any user, the risk terminator engine runs. And if the roles are changed as well, I mean the existing roles are also changed, then also the risk engine will flag us that these are the risks which may come in if the risks are there. If we take an example of a retail company which is using the risk terminator, it might use it, or the person responsible for setting up of new suppliers is not the same person as who approves payments. So setting up of new suppliers and the approval of payments is something which is again an SOD, and the risk terminator engine will definitely flag it for us, so that whenever a same person is there, you should not have both the roles. So in that way, we can prevent the potential fraud which may happen due to the same role being assigned to both the persons. So if you look at the use case for risk terminator, it can be applied to various scenarios as we can see in the slide. So it can be it can get started from the PFCG, the T code which we use for creating roles itself. So as in when we start creating the roles or modifying the existing roles, the risk terminator engine can start flagging us the risks right from there itself. And we can even try to troubleshoot it in the GRC access control front end environment as well. SU01 mask changes, I mean, yeah, all of it, I mean, in turn are directed to either the user assignments or the role creation or role changes, which the GRC risk terminator engine would flag it for us once we have it implemented in the SAP systems which we have. So initially it used to work very efficiently in ECC, and as per my experience by working with clients, it is working more efficiently now with S/4HANA systems as well. So it is something definitely which we can carry from our ECC environment to our S/4HANA environment without any doubt, because it is an efficient tool which is frequently updated by SAP themselves as well. So we can definitely carry on to the our new as S/4HANA systems as well. Coming to the access control mechanisms. So what all are the access control mechanisms? So first is the role-based access control, which we all know. So role-based access control is nothing but how can you prevent the access control with the help of roles. So this is something which we need to ensure that we are doing it on an efficient basis. So whenever there is a request for creation of new role, whenever there is a request of creation of the new role in the system, we need to ensure that we first look at the existing role, what is present, and then what is the need for creating anything new. We need to have a proper business justification, and then only we should proceed with it. So that's the first thing, and then definitely it is something which is very crucial. So at any time we receive a request, we need to ensure that we have the right amount of data to support that anything related to role changes is properly supported by the business justification as well, so that we don't end up creating redundant roles or duplicate roles or multiple roles available for the same task which is available already in the system, because this will end up creating a lot of redundant roles, which again will need to clean up as in when we move to S4 HANA system, or even in S4 HANA system if we are there. So if we move to the new version, so it again, I mean, we are getting all the delta to the new system, which is again, I mean, not providing any value to the client. The next is the authorization object and field level security. So this is something which we do day in and day out with our security in ECC. We used to do, and the same thing we are repeating in the S4 HANA as well. It's just that in S4 HANA, the authorization object level security is limited, because here we need to deal with the services, and then we need to ensure that we are working on the service part here. But again, services again get embedded into the auth objects. So yeah, this is something which we need to ensure that we are doing it on a regular basis, and then we get to know that how that business demand is getting converted to technical demand, and then what all field level securities are changing due to that. So we need to ensure that we have the right amount of control over the field level security, authorization object, or the in terms of Fiori, the service level security as well. So next is the access request and approval workflow. So if you have a proper GRC tool implemented in your landscape, you need to ensure that your access request, right from the creation of requests to approval of requests. So approval again can be two-way approval, three-way approval, four-way approval, or just one-way approval, depending on the type of request or depending on the how the client wants it. So you need to ensure that the proper access request approval workflow is in place, and then you have the right amount of approvers present in your system, and maybe if possible different approvers as well, so that the access request is properly reviewed, approved, the risk analysis is done in a proper way, so that at the end of the day, any request getting created and then provision, the roles getting provisioned or the users getting provisioned to any new roles getting created is properly justified. This is something which we can't overlook, because this is comes entirely into the security area, and then we need to ensure we have it implemented in an efficient way. Even for cloud these days, I mean, I'm working actively on identity access governance, IAG in short, which SAP has released for cloud. So there, like in GRC, we used to have a lot of customizations which are available. So I think you would have heard about MSMP workflows, BRF workflows. So these things were available, which provided us customization to the maximum. So depending from client to client, we could redesign the entire MSMP workflows, the BRF workflows with the help of it. The entire workflow was something which we could customize it for the client. But again, I mean, it was something which was complex. It was not as easy as anybody coming in and then just learning it and doing it. It used to come in with a lot of practice. So when it comes to cloud, so SAP has limited the customizations. Although, I mean, customizations are limited, but in a standard way itself, SAP has provided almost like 10 to 11 different workflows, which the users can use as a standard now. So depending, I mean, SAP worked with a lot of clients from different industries, different requirements. It analyzed a lot of GRC customizations which were done in their workflows. So based on that, SAP came up with, I mean, 10 workflows which I remember available till last month in the identity access governance, which is a tool for governing the cloud applications. So even for the cloud area, it is definitely an efficient mechanism to ensure that your entire workflow is a standard and then very efficiently controlled. So SAP is investing a lot in ensuring that your access request approval workflow is strong enough and then it is intact for your clients, in order to ensure that the approvals are happening in a secure way, in a secure environment, and with multiple approvers being present, be it the manager, be it the role owner, be it the risk owner. So all of it needs to be there. If possible, different only. But yeah, depending from client to client, it may happen that they have limited people who can review the request. So yeah, we can have the same people also approve it. But again, I mean, we need to define it in such a way that it doesn't cause any conflict. So that's something we need to look into. Now, coming to emergency access management, yeah, I think this we talked about in our previous classes as well. So this is nothing but your firefighter access management. So this is also something which we need to make sure that we have efficient access control mechanism in order to control that. So this also becomes very critical when it comes to auditing purpose, because FFIDs are the most vulnerable when it comes to audit, and then we tend to give more access to it, and then people tend to leverage it for more than the actual usage for which the firefighter ID was intended to do. So this is something which we need to make sure that we are having a control over it. We are reviewing the FFIDs and everything present with the EAM IDs. We need to ensure that we have the complete mechanism in an efficient way. So next is this access review or the recertification, as it's called these days in the cloud. So this is nothing but your user access reviews, which we should ideally run it based on a frequency decided with the client. But yeah, it's either on a quarterly basis or a biannual basis or annual basis. But we need to ensure that this is in place. This basically ensures that whatever access is present with the users at that particular moment of running the review is regularly reviewed. So when we run it, the access requests, depending on how do we want it, whether we want it to target it to their managers or the role owners, accordingly we can run the user access reviews, and the requests basically are sent out then to the respective people. It can be their manager, it can be their role owner, in order to review that if the roles which are currently assigned to the users, are they in line with the duties of that person, or is it something which is not required by that person? So once the respective lead approves it or rejects it, that particular role is either removed from the user or it's basically retained back with the user. So this is something which we need to decide the frequency upon, and then whenever we are running it, we need to ensure that all the users are covered in this, because I think this is something which I have seen. I think I would like to know from you as well, that whenever we try to run any user access reviews, so all the users are not covered in one go. Some users tend to get miss, and then we need to ensure that we are checking that what all users are missing, and then we need to run the reviews again. We need to ensure that you have the proper approvers marked to each of the UARs we are sending. So this is something which we need to be very cautious about, and then that's why the deciding the frequency, preparing for it at least a month before we start running it, is something which becomes very crucial in maintaining a good access control mechanism for the client. So any questions till now based on the techniques we discussed, the access control mechanisms we discussed, any challenges which you faced in your client related to this?
Yeah. So I have one question regarding the SODs. Okay. For CC, we have SODs based on actions and permissions, right? So how is it different from HANA? Right? So HANA, it is on Fiori based, right? So we have apps in it. So how do you check the SODs like for HANA?
Yeah. So for S4 HANA, when it comes to SODs, it is again, the permissions what the apps are providing is something which we need to see whenever we are tracing it with the help of ST or trace or any other thing. So it will basically check that what all permissions are being checked. So again, the SODs here also are related to permission levels also. So this is not like, if services are there are no permissions which are being checked. So depending on whether it's a read permission, write permission, and when it comes to write permission, what exactly is the right permission checking in. So all of it will need to trace it out in order to embed it into the rule set which we design for SODs.
So do we have a separate rule set for S4HANA, or do we use the same rule set what we are using for ECC?
So the same rule set can be carried forwarded to S4HANA also. But the thing here is, there would be a lot of key codes which are not present in the S4HANA. there are a lot of T codes which will not be used as T codes. They'll be used as Fiori apps. So we'll need to look into that, and then we'll need to accordingly replace it. But yeah, I think the ideal condition would be to develop a fresh rule set based on the S4HANA landscape, because I think a lot of things would change. But yeah, you can carry forward your old rule set as well. But then you need to make sure that the changes which are present in the S4 HANA version in which the client is moving into is taken care of. But yeah, ideally, you should try to build it from scratch if it's feasible. But again, it's not feasible for all the clients. So what I have seen is people taking their old rule set, doing the customizations as per the S4 HANA changes which are available, and then again we need to test it out based on good use cases or good test examples, so that the new rule set which or the customized rule set which we have built is working efficiently. It is detecting the SODs, it is not overlooking any SODs. So we need to test it out that way.
Yeah, but my question is like, see, like, if we don't have any permission levels and action levels when we go for files, right? So, I mean, like, we are going for Fiori apps. So, for apps, we have services, right? So, how do we relate those services? This is what my question is like in this rule set.
Yes, yeah. So the permissions, I mean, this you can see in the Fiori apps library. So whenever we go to Fiori apps library, there's something called as catalogs, groups. So we need to see that what exactly are the catalogs containing. So the catalogs will contain apps, and the apps will contain the relevant services. And those services in turn are hitting some permissions in the backend system. So that permissions which they are hitting, that we need to trace it out. And based on that, we can do the further changes into the rule set. So the services which are there in the system, they are indirectly hitting the permissions only. So that's why when I say, so the permissions which are available in the ECC, which T codes were hitting previously, so the same thing is happening with the Fiori apps as well. So it's not like that Fiori apps are not hitting your permissions and then they are only focusing on services. Services are just a measure for Fiori apps to, like, because they are like web based apps, and then they need to talk to the GUI based SAP which is there. So they are just a conveying mechanism. But then in turn, when it comes to creation of SODs and rule sets, they are hitting the permissions in the background.
Hey, you know, ZaranTech now offers SAP corporate training. That's right. Train your workforce in SAP with our comprehensive program. We offer customized courses, certified trainers, and hands-on labs for both individuals and businesses. Our standout features: bespoke training, fully configured servers for practice, in-house materials, and a dedicated LMS. Plus, get session recordings and 24/7 support. From functional to technical modules, we have got it all. Choose ZaranTech for SAP training and watch your team excel. Learn, upskill, succeed with ZaranTech.
So, we need to.
So you mean to say, like, even though we have services here, still it will check for the permissions you're saying. So we don't have to add these services in the rule set then?
No, the services should not be present in the rule set. We can still work with the permission and the action level rule set which we had in ECC.
Okay. So
I can come up with a sample rule set as well during a session, how we have it designed for Fiori. So I can try to walk you through. Yes. So the rule set is not entirely different, which is good for us, because I think building a rule set takes a lot of time and effort. So I can definitely come up with a Fiori rule set for a client which we have designed for one of it. I'll just again anonymize some data, so it will be good for you. You can try to take that. You can take that as a sample file, and then you can definitely try to build upon that. So we can have that. Will definitely help you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Yeah, anybody else? Any challenges you faced in terms of these access control mechanisms which we talked about?
Yep. Hi, Sonu. Pooja here. So I just wanted to check, like, adding to Arjun's question, can we check SOD for Fiori apps?
Yes, Pooja, we can. So it's not like for.
Can you, I mean, while doing the sessions, can you show us that as well?
I can try to show you, because I think the demo systems which you have are not connected to GRC. So I'll need to check that if we can have GRC connected, because I think for showing SODs, we'll need to have GRC connected to the S4HANA system. which you have, or I can try to show you in maybe the screenshot way if possible. I can try to get some screenshots and then try to show you that how are we doing the trace for any Fiori app to Fiori app. If there are two Fiori apps getting conflicted, how are we how are we checking the permissions? How are we doing it in the rule set? Yeah, I'll try to make sure I include that. But I think in the demo systems, what this training mostly focuses on is related to Fiori security. Like how do we create a role? How do we create a catalog app? And then how do we deal with all of this? I think GRC getting embedded is not something which I know if it's possible. But if possible, then definitely I can try to guide you on how do we do with the SOD part for Fiori as well.
Sure. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, I'll move on to the next topic then. Introducing the security to the digital core of ERP. So again, this is something which is related to the previous topic which we talked about. So we need to ensure that whenever we are doing security implementations for any ERP, I mean, we are dedicatedly talking about S/4HANA now. So we need to ensure that the business data and processes within the central system are protected, and then they are not getting affected because of the multiple changes which are coming in. So we need to stick to the digital core of ERP, which is SAP as S/4HANA for us. And for that, again, I mean, these are the key components which we need to focus on. First is the access control and identity management, which is nothing but how do you control your roles, how do you control your users, how do you control their authentication and authorization. All of it will fall into that. Then data encryption and protection. Yeah, this is again, I mean, not dedicatedly for security, but yeah, for developers in order to test it out with an anonymization of the financial data in the development. And in order to protect any information which is critical, we need to do that. Again, audit logging and monitoring. This is something which is crucial. We need to make sure that it is enabled in the production system so that we can try to audit anything if available in that audit log without running around when there is a question from auditors. Then repeating the same thing of compliance and governance. So we need to ensure that these key components are taken care of whenever we try to move to SAP S/4HANA, because I think as in when the businesses come in with their demands, we tend to fulfill their demands, and then these things sometimes get overlooked. So we need to ensure that we stick to these things, and then we try to make sure that all of these key components are taken care of. So yeah, I mean, with the advent of SAP S/4HANA, the complexity of ERP systems, as we are seeing here, was drastically reduced. So initially, when S/4HANA was not there, when we used to have ECC systems, there used to be a separate BW system, there used to be a separate EWM system, like lot of different ECC boxes were available. So it was becoming quite complex, which led to, again, the S/4HANA being an integrated system. So now you can have your just one system and your multiple ECC systems can be embedded right into that. So you don't need to, again, think about maintaining multiple ECC systems. So the maintenance part is strictly reduced now. And then instead of maintaining multiple ECC boxes, you can just cater to one SAP S/4HANA box. And then if it's again an embedded Fiori for us, which is mostly it would be, because I think the hub model is getting deprecated and then SAP is not promoting it, but it's still there. But yeah, even the embedded Fiori means that your Fiori system is also embedded into your S/4HANA system itself. So now the complexity of maintaining multiple ERP systems is drastically reduced now. And then we can just focus on one SAP S/4HANA system, and all your data, your master data, your tables, everything basically lies in your one S/4HANA system itself. Sophistication of cyber threats, yeah, it still continues to be there. I mean, whether it's ECC or S/4HANA, your cyber threats is something which tend to be more and more innovative, and then you need to ensure that your system is protected with the help of that. So for cyber threats, there can be multiple measures which we can take, which we'll look at it in the coming slides. But yeah, this is more relevant to the network security, which we can deal later as well, not required for this session now. So regulatory compliance requirements. So this is something which may differ from client to client, and then it may differ from geography to geography. So as we discussed about a use case for the United States with HIPAA law. So similarly, we have multiple laws for different geographies. So we need to ensure that those requirements are also taken care of. And then whenever we are working on any client environment and any new requirement coming in which requires a change of entire landscape, or particularly the ERP to S/4HANA transformation. So these things are also not overlooked, and then we try to ensure that regulatory compliance is in sync with the S/4HANA compliance, and then it will definitely help us in the long run, so that whatever we design, we are intact with what is mentioned in the regulatory compliance as well. So third is the integration with cloud and mobile technologies. So again, this was something which was missing in the ECC system when we used to have it. So if you used to have cloud, then that cloud used to be a separate, and your mobile getting embedded to mobile was something which was very difficult and it was not possible itself for ECC. So with the advent of S/4HANA, both of these things were taken care of. Now you can fluently integrate with any of the cloud apps which are available, and then with the Fiori, you can have it installed in your mobile applications as well. I mean, not all apps are again compatible for mobile. So when I'll go through the Fiori apps library, I can show you that where you can check that whether this app is a mobile compatible app, whether it is your a tablet compatible app, or it is only a desktop app. So that difference is there, but then still there are majority of apps which are being developed and then which are still in development, which are mobile based as well. So you can just have your apps opened in your mobile, and then and it will have the same functionality as it has in desktop. So all of this was taken care of when SAP S/4HANA was being designed, and it is getting more and more improved. So this is something which we can look forward to in the coming years. It's the most innovative area, and then a lot of innovation is possible in this cloud and the mobile technology arena with SAP S/4HANA. Protection of sensitive data. So even though, I mean, we are moving from ECC to S/4HANA, so the sensitive data, as we talked about, we need to ensure that that is properly controlled, and then there is no breach of any sensitive data which is happening. So even with SAP S/4HANA, this is something which we need to take care of. And then as we talked about the GRC, access control mechanisms, or the strategy mechanisms, I think those things, if taken care, it will definitely help us in the protection of sensitive data to the utmost importance. I think this is again, slide is talking about the things which we talked about in the previous classes also. So these are some of the regulatory compliance which are available for different regions. So GDPR for UK, HIPAA for US, SOX for US. And SOX for UK is also there these days. Now it's also, initially it used to be called something different. Now it's again called SOX for UK. So, I mean, these are all the things which will come in, and then we need to ensure that we are adhering to this, so that again, we do not end up in designing anything which is not compliant with these norms, which are the geographical norms available. So the clients sometimes may not be sure on this, but then again, you need to be sure that you are compliant with this. And then, yeah, we need to ensure that we are protecting the identities of people and identities of any concerned person available, so that is something which is not easily prone to failure, I can say. Business continuity and availability. So, I mean, ERP systems, when we talk about them, I mean, though they are smoothly functioning, sometimes they get disruption, they get downtimes. So we need to be prepared for that as well. So we need to ensure that we have the right amount of backup data centers available. So, I mean, when we'll discuss about the greenfield, brownfield implementation, there we'll talk about the data center levels as well. That initially in ECC, how the data centers were. When now we have moved to S/4HANA, so how does the data center work? I mean, how does a data center in ECC different from S/4HANA? What all things we have available now? So all of it we need to think about, because this indirectly affects the disruption of the system, and any downtime with any data center can affect your entire system. And then again, this is something which can be escalated, and then it comes down to security level as well. So we need to ensure that we have the right amount of preparation for the downtimes or the disruption in the system which can happen. So the cyber attacks, ransomware, I mean, these are some of the things which keep on happening in the SAP systems. So we need to make sure that we are prepared for this, and then we are implementing good security measures so that we are already prepared for these attacks, which may happen potentially to our systems. And I think this slide is stressing on the importance of it, which we have talked about. So I think it should be good. So we'll just move to the next slide, which will basically talk about the key differences between ECC and S4HANA. So I'll just move there. Maybe we can start with it. And this is the agenda for this slide. We'll talk about the enhancement in S4HANA. We'll do a quick comparison between S4HANA and ECC. We'll talk about the differences between them and then key differences. When we come to that, I'll tell you that why we have kept few things at key differences and why these things are there. I mean, it's not a repeat topic, but this is something which is really a key thing for us when we move to S4HANA. So we need to make sure that we are adhering to this. So the enhancements in SAP S4HANA. So as we talked about, I mean, in ECC, we used to have multiple boxes for EWM, for BW, and for multiple different things. But in SAP S4HANA, this was all embedded into one system. So now you will just have one SAP S4HANA system. And then, yeah, from an enhancement standpoint, this was something which was very milestone event for SAP as they were able to combine it, because I think there were a lot of issues which were raised that in order to maintain multiple systems, a lot of investments were being put in and a lot of multiple investments were required in order to ensure that the systems are running in. But then if we have one system now, all of that investments can be brought down, and then that time and investment can be put for maintaining just one SAP S4HANA system. So the most upgrades for SAP S4HANA were in 2018, which were like based on majorly it was finance related. So it basically brought a lot of enhancement into the finance arena, and then also the AI, blockchain, and IoT. I mean, these were something which started booming during that time. So that was also something which was started getting embedded into the SAP S4HANA. And then again, I mean, the enhancements are still continuing. They keep on getting increasing, and the pace of it is getting higher and higher only because a lot of new technologies are getting introduced, and then SAP is trying to embed it as much as it can into its SAP systems. So if we talk about 2021, so again, SAP delved into more new industries like energy and natural resources, public services, discrete industries. So some of these industries initially SAP wasn't present in, and then it basically dived into these industries as well. I mean, it is not full-fledged available here, but yeah, I think SAP is trying its best to be there. So, I mean, wanted to talk about similarities as well, because I think there's a hype that SAP S4HANA has come in, it will replace ECC, and then there would be something very drastic change. You'll need to learn SAP S4HANA. So that's true. I mean, you'll need to learn SAP S4HANA, but from a security standpoint, there are similarities as well, which we need to think about. And it's not something which is entirely different, and then you need to study an entire module of SAP. So it's nothing like that. There are few similarities as well, which we need to be aware about before we go to the differences, because I think this is something which tend to be overlooked as we were having the discussion around the rule set part or the risk analysis part. So, I mean, all of it are not entirely different. There may be few tweaks which are different for S4HANA, but then definitely there are similarities as well, which we need to be aware about. So SAP S4HANA and ECC have several features in common. So basically, if we start with, so they are performing the same business activities. So coming to business, the activities such as manufacturing, sales, procurement, all of it still remains the same. Initially, it was like happening in different system. Now all of it is being controlled by a single system. I mean, if possible, even we can have different S4HANA systems for different industries or different functions of the client as well. But if there is a need, we can embed it into one S4HANA system as well. So that's the similarity, the first similarity which is present in the sheet as well. So additionally, coming to both these solutions, they centralize the enterprise data in one database. So initially, as we talked about, so when SAP ECC was there used to be multiple databases which SAP allowed the end users to go for. There used to be Oracle, DB2. So for different functions, there could be possibility that different databases were being used. which used to slow down a lot of things. But then again, now with the advent of the SAP S/4HANA, the SAP in-memory database management system, which is SAP HANA, which is present. So this basically would add more benefit. So, I mean, if we talk about the similarity in this space, so if earlier only one database was being used, say Oracle was present, so I mean now only again one database will be used, which would be SAP HANA. But from a database standpoint, it is like a one database being used earlier in SAP ECC, and now again one database would be used in SAP S/4HANA as well. So that way we can think about it as a similarity, that you can still continue to transfer all your database from your Oracle or DB2 directly to SAP HANA. And then this is something which, again, I mean, a lot of things would need to be thought about, that what all things are possible in SAP HANA or not. But then again, you don't need to think it as something different from a security standpoint. Yeah, it's only a database change for us. So the way we used to operate will not get affected majorly in terms of the day-to-day operations which we are doing. Now coming to the next similarity. So, I mean, both the systems are modular systems. You can basically add the components you need. You can propose the components which are maybe not present right now in the system. You can propose it to SAP. I mean, it was again present earlier as well. There are few features which are missing. So SAP used to release it with the frequent upgrades, SP upgrades, which it used to release. I mean, the same things are happening now as well. So you can still continue to do that and then add the components as well if it's available. So this similarity is something which is still getting continued. So when it comes to performance, so performance wise, I mean, again, ECC was behaving well. And even the S/4HANA is something which behaves subsequently well when it comes as compared to ECC. But again, performance wise also, I mean, this is not something which is drastically different in terms of security standpoint. It's just that the way we used to operate, the way we used to track the security changes, it is different. But yeah, I mean, from a performance standpoint also, this is something which is a similar attribute which we can say for both SAP S/4HANA and SAP ECC. So now focusing dedicatedly on security, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. This was again intact for ECC, and now it is available. The same thing continues for SAP S/4HANA also. So the core principles of security remain unchanged if compared to SAP S/4HANA and SAP ECC. So the need to protect the data, the need to make sure that the data is available at the right time and the identity is secured. So these things are something which still remain at the core of security for both SAP HANA as well as SAP ECC. Now coming to the specifics of user and role management, as we know that the role design has changed because now we have Fiori apps, now we have catalogs, groups, spaces, pages getting embedded into our role. But then the concept of managing the users and roles to control the access still remains, again, a critical activity for both. Even if it was in ECC, it was critical. Even in S/4HANA, it is critical. So it's just the way the roles are designed, they may be different. The way you used to troubleshoot, they may be different. But entirely the core focus during that time was also to focus on the, like, how do we manage the users and roles? It still remains the same here. We need to ensure that we are managing the roles and users in an efficient way for SAP S/4HANA as well. So that's a big similarity which we need to think about. So whenever you go on, start working for any S/4HANA system, the core principles of security, CIA, triad, the user and role management, this is something which will again continue to do. So this is not very different when it comes to doing that in our day-to-day activities. So coming to the auditing and compliance, this is again, it used to happen in ECC and the same has been continued to S/4HANA as well. So the audit logging was present in ECC and the same is continued to S/4HANA. And coming to the compliance standards, your GRC access control getting integrated with ECC and now getting integrated with SAP S/4HANA ensures your compliance part is also taken care of. Even if you have any third-party tools available, that also ensures your compliance with the SAP S/4HANA system. And the same used to be for SAP ECC system as well. So again, here, there is not any drastic difference which you can see. So This is also something which is getting continued from the SAP ECC and then still present in the SAP S/4HANA as well. So again, the monitoring and incident response. So this is something for which we used to do the same with any third-party ticketing tools such as ServiceNow or Calm or maybe other ticketing tools like Jira, which we used to use for SAP ECC. The same has been continued for SAP S/4HANA as well. So again, the need for continuous monitoring was present during ECC. The same has been continued for SAP S/4HANA as well. So in terms of how we used to operate, then whenever a ticket used to come, how it used to translate to SAP, how do we used to deal with it, how do we used to close it. So the day-to-day operations in terms of the monitoring and incident response still remains as important as it was present in ECC. And then the same has been continued to SAP as S/4HANA as well. So this is something which we need to think about, and then we need to keep in mind that the regular practices will not change drastically unless there is a entire shift in the ticketing mechanism altogether. So let's start with the comparison between the SAP S/4HANA and SAP ECC. So the first and foremost is the UI, the user interface or the access management of the systems which we need to compare upon. So if we talk about the transition from SAP ECC to S/4HANA, one of the most noticeable changes is the shift from a transaction code-based navigation to a user-centric or a role-based approach with SAP Fiori. So this was an entire lift and shift in how the SAP S/4HANA is perceived, because I think the entire shift in the UI, how it used to feel in the SAP ECC with the GUI-based navigation, the transaction code-based navigation, usage of multiple transaction codes for performing any business activity. And now all of it just getting shifted to a more dynamic approach with SAP Fiori. So when we had SAP ECC, so we had SAP GUI, which was, it was functional, but required users to memorize or note down the transaction codes for their daily tasks. So the entire concept of memorizing or noting down the transaction codes, even though the user being a technical user, the user being a business user, that was something which was required by them. And then SAP was something which was perceived as something complex, which required good amount of training for anybody trying to use it. And then this was something which was, again, a quite daunting task for the new users. And with the advent of SAP S/4HANA, by leveraging SAP Fiori, this transformed the entire experience by offering a tile-based dashboards. We can think about Fiori apps as something tiles which are available for the end users to just go and click on. So it's kind of a tile-based dashboard, we can say, where the tasks which the users used to do with the help of T codes are now visually represented. So they can visually see the tasks which are happening. So it may not be entirely for all the Fiori apps which are present, because not all the Fiori apps are containing the graphs or the analytics which you can see in the real time. But then there are applications like fact sheets, there are applications like analytical apps, which we will further see in our Fiori sessions as well, that whenever a user tries to use any analytical app or any fact sheet app, so it basically changes the entire experience of that same task which the users used to do in the ECC environment with the help of SAP GUI. So it entirely transformed the ERP system to be more accessible to the users, and in turn it enhanced the productivity as well. So that is the first thing. Now second, coming to the data model. So the simplification in the data model in SAP S/4HANA, if we compare it to SAP ECC, it also marked a significant step towards efficiency and performance. So in ECC, there used to be multiple tables, or if we talk about like a separation of tables for customer and vendor data, it often led to a lot of data redundancy and complex reconciliation processes. So whereas with SAP S/4HANA, this addressed this concern, which was raised by the clients multiple times, with the concept of business partner. So with this business partner concept, the unifying customer and vendor data, it is integrated into one, and it entirely streamlines in how the data management is done now, and it enhances the overall data integrity of the system. So when we used to have ECC, we used to have separate tables for customer and vendor data. And then now with the advent of business partner, it's just embedded into one. So this entire fundamental change in the concept, it not only simplifies your database structure, but also supports a more holistic view in terms of business relationships. So this brings together an integrated way of approaching it, the business relationships, and it is something which is definitely a boom. And if we compare it to SAP ECC, we can get more access control strategies as well. Coming to security features which are available. So again, security is the paramount for us. So SAP ECC also provided a very strong foundation when it comes to security with the basic security features that were often needed with the third-party tools for advanced needs. But coming to the SAP S/4HANA, it elevates this by integrating enhanced security features directly into the platform. As we talked about the things such as encryption, improved compliance support, the anonymization, these things are definitely improved, and then we can also integrate SAP S/4HANA with a lot of cloud applications, SAP proprietary cloud applications, even the non-SAP applications. So these were something which are introduced newly into the SAP S/4HANA. So in terms of security features, we are getting more advanced capabilities which we can directly embed. Coming to the next, deployment model. So the flexibility in deployment model offered in SAP S/4HANA is entirely a game changer, which I can say. So when we had SAP ECC, it primarily focused on only on-premise environment. Even SAP S/4HANA is available in two forms, which we'll talk about in the greenfield, brownfield discussion in detail. So it is also available on-premise as well as on cloud. But again, on-premise is something which SAP is trying to get away with, because I think the more and more SAP tries to delve into cloud, it is being offered at a much broader way and in a much flexible way. So yeah, with the advent of SAP S/4HANA, the deployment models are offered were definitely something which was a game changer in the industry. So ECC focused predominantly on the on-premise environment, whereas in SAP S/4HANA, we have on-premise, cloud, and hybrid.
What sets ZaranTech apart in SAP corporate training? It's our unique blend of expertise and innovation. We offer customized courses tailored to each client's needs, ensuring relevant, targeted learning. Our vast trainer database brings you wisdom from the best in the field. Need resources? Access our extensive training material repository anytime. We are all about measurable results, providing detailed student metrics to track progress. And we don't just teach, we build community. Join our thriving social media network, connecting learners beyond boundaries. With ZaranTech, you are not just training, you are transforming your SAP expertise.
So hybrid models is also something which is there for majority of the clients. So that also was something which was offered with SAP S/4HANA itself. So this flexibility basically allows a business to choose any model that will fit their strategy. So it's not like a one fit for all. When we had SAP ECC, businesses had to fit their needs as per what ECC offered them. But when it comes to SAP S/4HANA, businesses themselves are having multiple options, whether they want to go for on-premise, whether they want to go for complete cloud. In cloud also, they have private cloud, public cloud, two options are available. Whether they want to keep few things in the on-premise, want to move few things to the cloud, or want to get new things from the cloud. So all of it can be customized, and then it is entirely flexible. All of it is being supported by SAP S/4HANA. So it basically ensures that your entire security model is robust, and it is also protected against any cyber threats which are coming in. Coming to next, it's about the authentication mechanisms and SSO. So if we talk about authentication mechanisms, they are definitely critical for ensuring the secure access to our ERP systems. So SAP ECC basically relied heavily on traditional authentication mechanisms and SSO methods, which met the basic requirements, but it lacked any advanced options provided by SAP S/4HANA. So with the enhanced encryption supported by SAP S/4HANA and protocols such as SAML, OAuth, these are some things which are directly offered by cloud identity services, which is nothing but authentication tool by SAP. So these are some of the protocols which are directly available for you to leverage, and you can leverage it for your SAP S/4HANA system by just integrating SAP S/4HANA with cloud identity services. and then you'll basically get to use the complex protocols. I mean, for which we used to have a separate team working on it. There was, in terms of ECC, if we talk about how it used to be. So if there was a need, then there used to be a separate team for SAML OAuth. But in SAP S/4HANA, this is something which is embedded, and then we can just leverage it by just integrating it. So this is something which again is a feature which is supported by SAP S/4HANA, and it basically provides a seamless user experience, minimizes the overall risks, and then any unauthorized access is also prevented by it. Any questions on the initial 5 comparisons which we talked about? Anything you have came across, any queries based on this before we delve into the further comparisons? Okay, we'll move forward. So the next comes is the authorization management. So basically here, SAP S/4HANA's approach to overall authorization management focuses more on the role-based access, and which again emphasizes on the roles containing Fiori, which allows for a more effective control on who can do what within the system. And with the advent of Fiori, it provides again a very good user interface for users to work on. So this not only enhances the security, but it also aligns with the principle of least privilege, reducing any unnecessary access that could lead to data breaches. So when we had SAP ECC, we had this transaction and object-based authorizations, whereas coming to Fiori, it definitely requires a new approach in defining authorizations. Now we need to think about how a OData service are present in any catalog, how that OData service, if present in the system, are they activated or not? If not activated, how can we activate them? So all of it is something which is definitely different, what we didn't had in SAP ECC. And then now it's something which is present in SAP S/4HANA. So this entire shift is something which is quite notable, which we need to think about. So next comes is the compliance and auditing. So with SAP S/4HANA, like with the strict regulations and compliance standards, because I think as in when SAP is upgrading to ECC to S/4HANA, even the regulations are updating themselves. They are also getting more and more stricter. They are also getting more and more new norms are getting introduced. So there is a need for definitely integrating tools for managing compliance, which was not that important when we had ECC, because there initially the norms were also not that strict. But as in when this year passes by, the norms also get stricter. So it becomes more and more important for you to have some integration capabilities possible, so that you can try to integrate with more systems in order to ensure that your compliance needs are met. So SAP S/4HANA offers definitely an additional tools for compliance management as well, which makes it easier for businesses to stay compliant with relevant laws and regulations, and definitely in turn prepares you for the audits coming in with less effort, which was not the case for SAP ECC. When we had SAP ECC, there was no integration possible with any of the cloud compliance mechanisms. And then we had to ensure that we are prepared much in advance for any audit happening or any business impact happening. And then we had to troubleshoot it. And depending on that, there was a huge time and investment which was spent. But yeah, I think with the advent of SAP S/4HANA, this is something which is focused with additional tools compatibility, which we can directly plug in. And then it will definitely assist us in preparing for the audits with much less effort. Next is the monitoring and incident response. So the advanced monitoring and incident response tools which are present in SAP S/4HANA, they basically leverage artificial intelligence and machine learning to proactively identify and mitigate any potential security incidents. So even though you need to be proactive from your end as well by ensuring that right amount of recurring activities are planned, right amount of manual checks are also done at frequent intervals. But this is something which is again embedded in SAP S/4HANA also. So this not only helps us in maintaining the business continuity, but also helps us in protecting any sensitive data against any unauthorized access. So this is something which is definitely need to be compared with how it used to be in SAP ECC, where we didn't had any advanced monitoring capabilities. And then it was something which was lagging there, which SAP has improved with SAP S/4HANA. The next comes is the custom code security. So with SAP S/4HANA, there's basically a new emphasis on secure coding practices because now there's a modern development environment which the developers have got. So this basically requires developers to adopt to any new security practices, which ensures that their custom code is not vulnerable. So initially, we used to have only ABAP as the environment, and then they used to code only on the ABAP level, and then that was the only coding thing available. But yeah, with the advent of SAP S/4HANA, even for Fiori apps, I mean, there's Fiori app based on UI5 technology. So now ABAPers, the developers, now we can say now they are not only ABAPers, they need to ensure that they have adopted to UI5 level coding as well. So they need to prepare themselves for the new coding environment which they have got. And then it definitely is more secure than how ABAP used to be. ABAP is also definitely a much secure coding method. But yeah, UI5 is also something which now developers need to adapt to because that is something which is required for the new Fiori apps which are coming in. Next is the data protection. So basically, the enhanced data protection capabilities which are present in SAP S/4HANA includes better encryption and better data anonymization features, which we discussed in yesterday's class, and then they are definitely crucial in today's data-driven world. So these days, I mean, there are lots of data which is being sent from one device to another device. There are a lot of cloud applications available. So the total amount of data being exchanged from one server to another server, from one device to another device is getting more and more. So we need to ensure that we are protecting we have the right techniques in order to protect the data. So these features basically, which are coming it with SAP S/4HANA, they help organizations meet any data protection regulations or protecting any safeguard sensitive informations against breaches or against any unauthorized attacks which the system may be vulnerable to. SAP S/4HANA basically offers a very good compliance mechanism when it comes to the data protection. So yeah, these were few of the comparisons which I wanted to highlight before we dive into the differences and the key differences between SAP S/4HANA and ECC. So yeah, if there's anything you can feel free to ask. Okay, I'll take it as no. Let's dive into the differences between SAP S/4HANA and ECC now. So again, I have noted that I'll definitely try to come up with screenshots wherever I can, because I think that will give you more experience in terms of how it used to be in ECC and how it used to be in S/4HANA. But I think, yeah, currently, I think this is something which we can talk about in terms of the areas of difference which is available. So when it comes to data processing, so this is something which when we come to SAP ECC, it used to be traditional batch processes. You would have heard about batch processing job still going on, batch processing job getting failed. So that was the kind of thing which used to happen when it was ECC environment. But now when it comes to SAP S/4HANA, it is like a real-time analytics which keeps on happening. So the batch processing jobs which used to be there, though some of them are still there, it's not completely stopped. But now you are able to get the real-time data, the real-time and analytics of any information, like the Fiori apps which we were talking about. So the Fiori apps talk to one another, especially these fact sheets and analytical apps. So analytical apps basically are the apps which are only applicable for your system if your SAP is there working on HANA database. So these are like database level apps which we'll talk more about in the Fiori section as well. So they basically interact directly with your HANA database. And that's why this real-time analytic facility is possible now with SAP S/4HANA, because it talks directly to your database, gets the data from there, and then shows it in terms of UI. So it is something which was entirely missing in SAP ECC, the real-time analytics capability, which is definitely a huge improvement when it comes to SAP S/4HANA. Now coming to database, so again in SAP ECC we used to have multiple options such as DB2, Oracle, SQL, MaxDB. But yeah, when you move to SAP S/4HANA, you don't have any option. Like that's the only option you need to go to. So HANA database is the only option which you will need to adopt to. So that's why I think, as we discussed, whenever the transitioning is happening from SAP ECC to SAP S/4HANA, so yeah, the first thing should be the database transfer, which should happen, and then accordingly, gradually, we should proceed towards the actual transfer of the ECC system to S/4HANA system as well. So from database standpoint, this is the main difference which we had in SAP ECC and SAP S/4HANA. Now coming to deployment, as we talked about in the comparison as well, SAP ECC just had the on-premise feature. It didn't had any cloud or hybrid or any other model available for us to deploy it. But when it comes to SAP S/4HANA, it has got multiple options for you to choose from. And these options, again, are still getting more and more improved. So that's the difference in terms of deployment. Now coming to functionalities. So SAP ECC basically had the embedded with, like it was with SAP GUI itself, and then it came in with whatever and analytics it was embedded in. It was not a real time. It was missing the Fiori part. But when it comes to SAP S/4HANA, so the one thing which we talked about, the vendor master and the customer data, was this business partner approach which came in. And then, yeah, we have this flexible workflows available now, which can be collaborated with the SAP Fiori. I mean, SAP Fiori had a lot of versions 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, but I think now it's only called as SAP Fiori. There is no versions as such for it, because I think they are keeping on updating it on a real-time basis and then quite frequently. So yeah, and then functionality-wise, there are much differences as well, but that delves more into the individual SAP modules like SD, MM, likewise. So I mean, individual SAP people working for their streams would know more about what functionality is different for them in SAP S/4HANA and how it used to be in SAP ECC. So that wise, we can't just limit it to 1 page or 2 page. It's definitely like an entire 1,000-page document for every release which happens with SAP S/4HANA. So what functionalities are different and how those functionalities are changing. So all of that is something which is mentioned in a quite detailed manner, so which we need to read about, and then we just need to make sure that we are focusing on our areas, that what all functionalities are getting changed, what all new functionalities are getting embedded. So when it comes to functionalities, what SAP does is, with every release, SAP releases a document called as SAP simplification list. So that is like at least 1,000-page document, or hundreds of pages are definitely there. So in that, with every release, you get to know that what all things are getting obsolete, what all things are getting changed, and if some of the things are getting like obsolete or they are getting deleted from the previous versions, whether it is SAP ECC, whether it is SAP S/4HANA's previous version, what is the new thing which is coming in. So all of it is mentioned in quite detail in that document, how to read that SAP simplification list document, and then it is something which definitely tells us more on the functionality part, that how is the functionality in the new version of SAP S/4HANA different from the previous version. And specifically ECC, yeah, I mean, there's a huge difference in terms of functionality, but still that simplification list document is something which needs to be there with us whenever we are working with any SAP S/4HANA deployment. Now coming next to the general ledger, this is again more related to the functional area. So in ECC, we used to have either the classic GL or the new GL. So, but whereas when it comes to SAP S/4HANA, so it's the new GL only which is being followed, and it's basically a prerequisite for any asset accounting mechanisms if implemented in the client landscape. Now coming to the architecture of SAP ECC and S/4HANA, like we have a separate dedicated session which talks more on the architecture area, because that is also something which is critical for us to understand, because I think whatever we build, it needs to make sure that it is adhering to the entire architecture present for SAP S/4HANA. So when it comes to ECC, it had like separate customer and vendor files, and then it was a traditional R3 architecture, like a presentation layer, application layer, database layer. But when it comes to SAP S/4HANA, we have now there's an embedded database layer. There is no separate presentation layer, database layer, and then that lag is not there. Now it's entirely combined into an in-memory database, in-memory architecture, what they call. And then, with the introduction of this business partner, it definitely provided more intuitive architecture and a less complex or a simplified architecture, I can say. So, I think these were some of the differences, the major differences which we will come across in SAP ECC and SAP S/4HANA. Any queries, any doubts in this till now in terms of differences? Okay, we'll move on to the key differences then. So some of these differences are specifically marked as key differences because I think not all of it will be applicable to us when we try to start working on the security aspect, because most of this, because again, SAP deals with multiple teams, multiple areas. So all of it might not be applicable. So that's why we have some of them as key differences, which we need to make sure we have it in mind whenever we are working, so that these in turn will affect our security landscape as well. So the first thing is the database. So when it comes to key differences, the first thing is the database, which we need to think about, which we have talked about in the initial slides as well. So the database for SAP S/4HANA is the in-memory database and the proprietary database, which is called as SAP HANA database. And this is something which is important for us because of the apps in which we are working upon. The few of the apps directly interact with the SAP HANA database. And then for that, we need to ensure that the HANA database is intact and then it is properly managed by the respective team, whether it is a basis team managing it, whether it is a SAP themselves are managing it for you. You need to make sure that you are in contact with the team, so that if there is any changes, any downtimes happening, or anything getting affecting the database is known to you. And this is not something which is, you are not overlooked whenever that information is being shared, because it will in turn affect your Fiori applications as well, if they are analytical and fact sheets mostly. The transactional apps still don't interact on a regular basis with the database of the system. But and analytical and fact sheet apps are something which are directly interacting with database on a real-time basis. So we need to ensure that that is intact. And when it as compared to ECC, that was not required because ECC had a lot of other options which it used to go to. So which is not the case for SAP S/4HANA. So the second thing, the major, is the deployment options, which we have read about and we have talked about a lot. So I think not talk more on this. It's already we have discussed that what are the options which are available for SAP S/4HANA and what was there for SAP ECC. So this is again critical for us because this is something which we will talk more to the clients on when we start the discussion for the deployment. The third is the user experience. So this is again, we have talked enough about it that here we had Fiori. In ECC, we used to work only with GUI and T codes. So this again remains one of the critical key differences for us. And the last but not the least is the architecture and data processing. Architecture is something which we need to remember, that how is the architecture of SAP S/4HANA structured, because with the incoming of this new Fiori landscape, there are a lot of new things which have embedded into the system. There's something called as web dispatcher. There's something called as network layer security. So we need to be aware of it, that how it is placed in the S/4HANA architecture, and then what all integration possibilities are available for the architecture of SAP S/4HANA. Whereas as compared to ECC, it was basically a traditional approach, and then not much of integration possibilities were there. So that was one of the major difference. So when it comes to key differences, we just need to be aware about how the architecture is there, the user experience, how it is different, the deployment options, and the database. I think these are some of the bits which you can remember. But as in when you keep on working on the SAP S/4HANA systems, and if you would have worked on SAP ECC systems, I think these things you can try to relate with the different business cases which you try to work upon. And whenever there is a transition, that is something you will definitely realize yourselves.